And I think it segues well into the next session, which is really about the different products that we have available. I think through the day we realized that one issue here for women also is that we're not giving them all the options available. We're kind of telling them this is what is your only option. So I think the next panel, which will be moderated by Tanya, will hopefully tackle all of those issues, and I will let her also introduce the panel for this. Thank you.
I think the conversation with Balki was a great segue into that, because it got to talking about exactly the issues that we want to raise in this session, is the range of menstrual hygiene products and not just the focus on sanitary napkins. So let me start by introducing the panel. So first of all, and it is a panel of innovators, because these are people who are coming up with really great new technologies on the product side, and I personally am excited to hear from them. So first of all, we have Meenakshi Gupta, who's the co-founder of Goonj, and Goonj has championed the idea of not just a piece of cloth to provide basic clean cloth napkins to women as a safe way to manage their periods. Meenakshi, if you could join us. We have Manish Malani, who is the co-founder of Mediacaso. I hope I pronounced that right. Mediacaso is a social enterprise that pioneered the introduction of the menstrual cup in India through their brand She Cups in 2010. Then we have Priyanka Jain, who is the force behind Hygiene and You. Hygiene and You is an online portal that offers information and products across the category of reusable menstrual hygiene products. Then we have Pratik, Kumar, who is the director of Aakar Social Ventures, which is an offshoot of Aakar Innovations, which is a social enterprise working on providing access to sanitary pads through decentralized production units, and have recently come up with a completely compostable product. Then we have Kristen Kagetsu, who is the CEO of Saathi Pads, which is again a social enterprise working on providing girls and women access to menstrual hygiene solutions, which are chemical-free and safe for the environment. And they've recently launched a completely compostable product made from banana fibers. And the last person on the panel, but not the least, is Irfan Khan, who was earlier with Janani and was instrumental in the introduction of sanitary napkins in their social marketing basket, and right now looks after the Aam Aadmi Mohalla Clinic program at Wish Foundation. So, welcome everyone. Let me start by setting the context, which is to say that even though this is a conversation about products, but we want to look at products from across the perspective of the value chain. You must have seen the value chain being up, across the venue at various locations and up on the AV also at different points of time. And we want to sort of talk about the products not just from the point of view of having a sanitary pad in the hand of a girl or a woman, but also looking at related issues of awareness, of use, of disposal, as well as of treatment and overall waste management. All right. Okay, so let me also at this point of time take some questions from the audience, which you'll have to respond to on your live polling tickers that you have on your table. Okay, the first one is information and availability of choice are bigger drivers of increasing access to MHM products than low cost. So agree or disagree? Okay, that's great. That's good to know, because a lot of what we'll be talking about today will be about choice and the need for choice in building awareness as well. If we can go to the next question. Programs focused on increasing access to menstrual hygiene products should consider user preferences and environmental impact in addition to cost. Agree or disagree? And here again, the focus of cost, because current programming on MHM has been focused on cost of procurement of products, especially from the government. Great, perfect. I think we're all in alignment. Right. Do we have more? Yeah, one more question, I think. All right. Research priorities for making appropriate MHM products available should focus on. Please pick anyone. And your inputs would help us actually, design some of the advocacy agendas that we are trying to drive through these programs. Standards, business models, development of variants of environmentally sound product options, and impact of lack of safe sanitation and disposal facilities on unhygienic use. Okay, so development of variants of environmentally sound product options to lower costs and respond to user requirements. Great. So we have, I think, a panel which responds exactly to those questions. So let's start the conversation. So first of all, I think I would like Meenakshi for you to sort of respond to the point of, we've just heard about how sanitary napkins are equated to menstrual hygiene products. Menstrual hygiene product means a disposable sanitary napkin, and that to a non-biodegradable one. So, and policies and products for menstrual hygiene are also sort of, more so policies actually are also geared towards that thought. So what are your sort of thoughts on that?
For Goonj, some of you may know that Goonj had come into this whole issue of menstrual hygiene from a very different path, so to say. We had been working on the issue of clothing and cloth, and when we were speaking to women in the villages of India, this was back in 2007, about exactly a decade ago, and the women started talking to us about using cloth and not having cloth for this basic need. So for us it was almost a revelation that cloth was not just about someone covering their body or having an extra pair of clothes. It was about not having cloth every month for this basic need. So that's how we came into this whole issue about MHM. And so therefore the product, and I find myself a little at odd sitting here in this panel on products, is because Goonj never looks at itself as a product provider or a product manufacturer even though we've in the last 10 years we've made more than 40 lakh pads. We do look at our sort of product, if you like, as an innovation, because it talks about using the urban discard cloth as an option or as a tool to address an issue which women can then sort of come up and speak. So for us, the cloth, the product was really a tool to reach out to women.
Yeah, so basically a tool to normalize menstruation.
To create at least a space for women to speak.
Right.
So it was really not a product by itself, but as a kind of an entry into the lives of women to start these conversations. And so that's how we've been looking at it, right? Not just in the villages, but also in the cities. So we sort of look at it as a 360 degree, and it was great that Balkiji was talking about, and coming back to the whole product thing, is that you're trying to know your consumer, right? The whole, if I was to just look at it from the product point of view, you have to know your consumer. How do you know your consumer? Your consumer is sitting in a village. Your consumer is a woman who may not have access, may not be able to afford, may not be even aware about the issues that are there. So when you're trying to come into this as a product manufacturer, you really have to see it from those perspectives, and be, because this is an issue. This is not like someone trying to buy any market product where already there's an environment which is in place for it. This product, this issue does not have an environment which is in place. It's still sort of all clouded up, people don't know what they're talking about. So when you as a product manufacturer come into it, you really have to build an environment first around it. So purely from the product point of view, that's how we look at it.
Right. So your whole campaign around not just a piece of cloth is geared towards that, if I'm not wrong.
It's basically geared towards putting cloth as an option on the table, because right now what we see is that even though reusable pads are talked about for which are slightly high at a higher cost, right? And it's meant for a segment which can afford that kind of product. But the same cloth, if I'm talking about a woman who doesn't have enough cloth, a woman who has, let's say, 2 or 3 saris, and has to deal with this basic issue every month, she doesn't have enough cloth. Why is it not an option for her as a piece of cloth? So we're trying to talk about cloth as an option for women who don't have options.
Yeah, right. So essentially keeping the traditional cloth as a continuing part of that choice of product.
Of the narrative, of the whole talk about how do we address this issue.
Right. But Meenakshi, I think the whole issue with traditional use of cloth is, from people who've been working on this issue, is that there is unhygienic and overuse of cloth in many cases, which is why it is sort of something that people want to move away from.
See, when you talk about unhygienic, and that's again one of the issues that I wanted to touch upon, and I hope that we are able to address that somehow. Unhygienic and the health of a woman being connected to her menstrual health. I don't think there's been enough talk about that, or research about that, or even insights about that. So it's not that the cloth is unhygienic by itself, it is the practices around it.
Right.
So I think we'll have to look at this issue in 3 ways. One is the very operational part of, whether a woman has access to a product or affordability and all of that. Another is a whole behavioral issue. How is a woman washing? How is a woman, keeping her hygiene? And the third is the mindset approach. How are we culturally, socially looking at this issue? Are we even able to talk about this issue? So there are 3 different layers that we are trying to actually look at. And so when anyone wants to bring in a product into this, and here, because Goonj doesn't look at it as a product. Again, I'm saying this because I'm here in this panel, so I'm trying to focus on that.
Yeah.
But even if you're trying to purely look at it from the product point of view, you have to understand that that's the whole ecosystem that you're working in.
Right, okay. So adding cloth, traditional cloth, to that option basket is also something which is important, especially if you're looking at the bottom of the pyramid.
It has to be. You see, I certainly feel that there must be as many options as possible for this, for women. I'm purely looking at it from the point of the last consumer. For her, she needs to have as many options as possible, but for her, she needs to have something which is, till we come to her, the last woman, if I was to talk about the women in the last villages of Uttarakhand, for example, or in the tribal villages of Jharkhand, till we are able to actually get the other things going for her, she needs something right now.
Something basic.
Something basic, something like Balkiji was saying, before you give someone, if you are able to give vitamins and multivitamins and a number of other things, which is great. You can't sort of say, go till that time, till I come back to you with that. You can't wait, that person needs something.
Right. Okay, so I think it's great that we're talking about choice here. I think, Priyanka, I would ask you now, you are a strong proponent of reusable products, both cloth and menstrual cups, and you offer a wide variety of both products and information on your website. So in your experience, what role does choice and informed choice play in, really generating awareness about the issue and reaching women with this whole narrative of menstruation and normalizing menstruation?
See, it plays a very important role, and as opposed to what Meenakshi is doing, I am mainly in touch with the urban women. But again, in the cities as well, we have all sorts of people. We have our house helpers, and so that's the kind of circle I'm in, and it's not just like very wealthy, rich people that I'm in touch with. But for people like me as well, it's very important to know the product choices, because I am definitely a believer in reusable products. But there are times when I know that woman is not going to have access to any water, or there is no way not she's going to insert a menstrual cup. So in that case, I would recommend disposable sanitary napkin, and now luckily we have compostable and biodegradable ones. So it's very important that each one of us knows our choices and we make the right decision according to where we are going. I'd even gone to Goonj once and I'd spoke to someone there, and I was just telling them that why don't you, promote menstrual cups as well whenever you're going for sessions. And they said, there's a cultural barrier as well, and one of the biggest challenge I face is this myth between hymen and virginity. So, which is a very big problem, though they are not connected, but it's a myth, and people feel that when they use a menstrual cup, they'll lose their virginity, and it's going to be a problem when a young girl gets married. And I can tell her, okay, it doesn't matter, that's not true, but then I know she's going to get into trouble when she's married. So I can't tell everybody to use a menstrual cup. So yeah, it's very important we know our choices, and I think we have a very good product gallery outside. You've covered all possible options we have, but we still need more innovation, and like we've kept labia pads outside.
Right.
I think that could do wonders, especially in rural areas. It's something so simple. You could make it with any piece of cloth. Like we are making them for the urban clients, but
I'll just interject you and go back to talk about, you have launched a new line of reusable products, which includes something called the labia pads. If you could talk about what it is first. I mean, I don't think everybody knows about that.
Yeah, so labia pads are really like tiny leaf shaped pads, and it's just made of 2 layers of fabric. So anybody can make it, just cut it into shape of a leaf and 2-3 layers of it put together, like with cotton flannel or any nice soft cotton cloth, so it's absorbent, and you're supposed to place it just at your labia. So and now that's another challenge when we talk about these body parts. A lot of us don't even know what it is. What is a labia, and we confuse. Sadly, like women herself don't know that vagina and vulva are different. These are 2 different things. So labia is basically just the folds of skin between your legs. So you're supposed to just place it there. It's not inserted like a tampon. It stays outside the body. And it's so tiny, but it can still absorb a lot. So if you're using a cloth pad and with the labia pad, you can wear your cloth pads a lot longer. So what happens is, firstly, your duration of being able to frequently changing a pad increases, and it's a lot less washing because cloth pads are obviously bigger in size. So a cloth pad is like, say, 30 centimeter long, but if it gets full from the center, you have to change it, even if the entire pad was not actually used. So with labia pads, because they're so small, so there's less washing, less water required, and you need to change less often. So products like these, and they're very simple to make. I mean, yes, what is available online is expensive, but I always encourage people, you just make your own, it's very easy. So it encourages your skills as well.
Right, yeah. And you can expand your menstrual hygiene wardrobe as much as you like.
And I feel that, young girls actually get excited about these things. In urban setup, what I have seen that when I'm talking to moms, they'll say, oh my God, I'm not going to tell my daughter to use cloth. I'm like, these are really nice, fancy looking cloth pads. Why? What's wrong? I won't tell her to wash. And I'm like, well, maybe she doesn't mind. Have you asked her? No, I'm not going to tell her. It's unhygienic. She's going to school. She's not going to take all that work. And if I'm talking to the girls in school and I actually just talk to them generally about the ill effects of sanitary napkins and what are the options available and will they be accepting a cloth pad, they are fine with it. But the mom initially just assumes, oh, my daughter's not going to wash.
Because they've probably gone through that process of shifting from cloth to disposable and cloth being not very hygienic. But I think this is where the distinction needs to be drawn between actual product features and awareness around it, about hygienic use and how do you maintain the product and how do you use the product. Yeah. So how long should you use it, when should you change it, how should you wash it. So those additional pieces of information are as much part of creating that market as is actually making the product available.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, so since we are talking about reusables, Manish, it'd be great if you can, speak about cups. I mean, it's a particularly difficult category because it goes into talking about vaginal insertion, which, as Priyanka mentioned, is a big sort of no-no as it comes to especially adolescents in our country. So how was your experience in introducing cups in India, and what were some of the barriers you faced?
Okay, thank you, Tanya. We started this endeavor with a different purpose altogether. We were trying to find some solutions or some way to work on cervical cancer, basically. Okay. So that is where when we were, that's way back in I think 2007 or 6 and 7, we were working on doing something for cervical cancer. So during that time, I met a person who introduced me to the menstrual cups also. And after discussion with a onco-gyno on this, she said, yes, unhealthy menstrual practices can lead to this, because not multiple sex partners, I mean, that is one of the main reasons for cervical cancer, but unhealthy menstrual practices can also lead to this. Secondly, during cervical cancer, a lot of bleeding happens continuously. Like, women are fed up of having a menstrual cycle for 5 days, 7 days. But these women, they bleed for continuously like months. So, and imagine using a pad which will get them rashes, allergies. So one pain is that is because of cancer, and second pain is that physical level. So that is where we actually started working on the menstrual cup, and we designed, developed and started manufacturing it in India. And we were ready with the cup in 2009. Okay. But before launching it, a thought process came that we have not tested it as per any FDA norms. So we tried to search for FDA norms in India for such kind of products. There were no FDA norms. So finally, She Cup was tested as per the US Pharmacopoeia. Okay. We have tested it for its implementation test also has been conducted on a She Cup. That means it is safe for a short-term implant, that is up to 29 days, because we were majorly thinking from a medico point of view. So, menstrual health management was like one part, but from medico point of view was a second part. Like, what about women who are HIV positive? Don't they menstruate? And women with cervical cancer, like, they have these problems. So we were thinking, because I have been working with the medicos, I'm not a medico, but have been working with the medicos from 95 onwards. Okay. So my mind was working on that. So when we launched the menstrual cup, yes, definitely, again we tried the pharma mode of distribution, where we kept it in the pharmaceutical stores and stuff like that. But after like 3 months, 6 months, the product started coming back. And then we started getting into the whole system. Like, why does it come back? Right. So we came to know that, you know, the person who's going and buying a sanitary protection is a man, and the person on the counter who's selling the sanitary protection is also a man. Like, in the morning in the session, they said that it will be quickly wrapped and given, no choices will be given. Same way, a sheet of paper would be there, they would pack it up and come back. So yes, it became a difficult process. So in 2010, we started the MHM program. I was just sharing my experience with someone outside. Being a man, it was a first time experience. I went and I stood in front of an audience, like around 50 to 65 women in the room, and I was talking about menstrual health management. And you know, like, it was my first experience, but by God's grace, no one shouted, everything went off well. I mean, I had done a lot of research because of launching the cup. So we had studied about it. It was not that I just went blank and
but never really menstruated yourself.
Exactly. But even talking, and that too, my first session that I conducted was in Rajasthan. So it was not in Bombay or Delhi, where, you know, I could expect something. And from there, we started doing this, and we definitely started the company for profit. But sooner we realized the problems related to menstrual health management, we converted our company into a socio-economic company. Okay. And all of us are volunteering. Since 2010 onwards, we have been conducting these programs in corporates, schools, colleges, medical colleges we have conducted, and across, like, women self-help groups and stuff like that. But now I'm really happy to see so many people who are actually getting into it. They are terming themselves as MHM experts, and they're going and talking about it, and people are accepting them. For us, it used to be very difficult to go, as you said, like going to a girls' school, talking about it. So earlier, we used to see that, okay, fine, we have spoken about it completely, we've given, but there is no feedback, nothing is coming. So we got on to a second level where we started engaging mother and daughter programs. Because the child would go, take our leaflets, talk to the mother, mother would put it in the dustbin or maybe not talk about it. So we have had many such experiences.
So you're really trying to build the category.
Exactly.
Since you're the first product in the market, and I think the work is still ongoing.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And this thing, I'm sorry to say, but this thing, it has come back to a 360 degree again from where we started. So like the basic idea was cervical cancer. Again, She Cup has got into the cervical cancer screening program. I would be happy to share this on this platform. And we are doing it for the largest red light area in Asia, which is Shonagashi. We are conducting a cervical cancer screening program free of cost for them. And we have picked up daughters of the sex workers who are not into the profession, and trained them and have given them employments also there. Okay. So we are doing that. Apart from that, then yes, because there are many more people who have joined it as a step ahead, we have now also got into creating fruit forest and plantation, because again it's a green endeavor. So our concept is MHM is there, but along with that a green endeavor is also there. That's what we are trying to do.
So you're trying to identify the triggers that help you build out that category, which is environmental impact and okay, so yeah, I mean, you also spoke about the challenges with retailers and the supply side, and we also spoke about how there is no choice in that conversation because it's basically a one-sided monologue, or not even a monologue. There's no conversation. So do you think there's a need to sensitize retailers or supply side providers?
There are special stores which are coming up now. Earlier, and we were very choosy, like you would not find She Cup on each and every website. If you ask Priyanka, she would be a better person to tell you about that. We are very choosy, like unless the first thing, if anyone who wants to promote the menstrual cup, first thing we would ask them, have you used it? So, unless the person is a user, they would not be able to communicate it properly. As far as the retail segment is concerned, definitely there are some stores who are terming themselves as eco stores or organic stores. They have started keeping, and that's why now She Cup has also developed a packaging for its product. Earlier, it used to just go in a small pouch.
Okay, so you are basically over the years identifying your niche, the segments that work for you.
See, otherwise also, if you see, there are when we say there are like 6 major things that a lady would like to have in a menstrual hygiene product. That is health and safety, hygiene, cleanliness, comfort, convenience, eco-friendly, and economics. And all these 6 factors you can only get from a menstrual cup.
Right. But actually, to my first question, that the issue of vaginal insertion still I think remains a barrier for the couple.
See, that is one segment. There are a lot of women who are married. How many of them? There are a lot of women who are mothers. How many of them? So there is a first, like, see, we are all talking about going to the grassroots. But have we?
Yeah, we haven't really identified the whole market.
Exactly. So there's another endeavor that we are taking is, like, suppose you are a cup user. Have you converted all the lady members in your family to use a cup and live with a sustainable menstruation? It's not about selling the cup. It is about sustainable menstruation. Have you all converted? Can you term your house as green? Then go on to the next flat, then go on to the building, then go on to the entire campus. So you have a lot to do. Like we're talking about going to the rurals. Yes, I do come from a small village, which is got a 850 population and living in Bombay now. But I have seen both. But at least start from somewhere.
Yeah, I think you're bringing up a good point that traditionally in any industry players tend to segment the industry and identify where their product or where their offering fits best. And that's what players on this stage right now also trying to do, where their innovations fit best, and not necessarily every innovation is suitable for every type of population, but we have to figure out the right mix, what works for whom. Okay, so I think since we've been speaking about reusables right now, I'd like to open the floor to a quick 2 to 3 questions before we move on to talking about the disposable part of the segment. So any questions at this point? None? Okay.
The menstrual cups have been around since 1970s, maybe not in India, outside. So what did you do differently to actually bring it into the other disposable product range? Like there was a sudden boom of menstrual cup. Nobody heard of them, though they were around for a very long time. So what did you do differently that worked for you to put it up as a brand and a product?
To be very honest, I have not done anything. Whatever has been done by the actual users who are satisfied with it. They are promoting it, they are talking about it, and they are only supporting the cause. The first menstrual cup was designed and developed in 1932 by 5 gynecologists in America for a film star. It got stalled because she passed away. Then came the menstrual cups developed out of latex, which had allergies problem. Then came the health grade silicone. So now it is health grade silicone, so it is very convenient, easy to make. And yes, definitely when we came to India, we had very, like when we were starting other products which were available, we were like the 7th or 8th brand in the world that time when we launched it in India, 2010. We did study that people are offering different sizes, different colors. So, while going through it, along with the gynecologist, because SheCup has done trials along with the gynecologist on different age group people also.
I just wanted to add one more point to it about, because it's the first time I've been hearing someone talk about cervical cancer and menstrual health. And there isn't enough research right now in this country for women to actually associate their menstrual health with their own health per se, on a broader sense. And I think of course you've done a great job going deep in to the women and directly giving them a product to experience. But I think on the other level, if we were to sort of go up and look at women's health, having somewhere menstrual health included in the mapping, because I don't think it's right now in the mapping of women's health. If I was to go to the PHCs and go to the big hospitals, between the entire spectrum, if I see a woman going into a health center or talking to Asha work or anyone about her menstrual health issue, I don't think there is even an understanding that that's going to impact her women's overall health per se. So I think there is a need for it to probably be brought into the women's health mapping first, and then you make an environment for something like a SheCup to be more accepted. I think the fact that a woman does not go and seek a more healthy menstrual product for herself is coming from the fact that she does not associate it with her health. Probably that's one of the issues.
Incidence of RTIs, bacterial vaginosis, cervical cancer, linkages with menstrual health, so all that is missing.
The moment they go into a PHC, they're told, most times you're told, ye hota hai. Our mothers, even if it was to leave your, within the confines of your household, most things around menses are said, ye hota hai.
Yeah.
So if it's not in the mapping of a woman's health, how is it going to, reach to the level of cervical cancer being associated with that, or how is it going to be addressed as a health issue per se? And how will a woman, go out and seek a health sort of serving product for herself?
Absolutely right, and that's one of the areas I think we need to push as a collective of organizations for policymakers to include that in some of the larger national level mapping also. Okay, so, yeah,
The
please.
question is for Priyanka around your labia pads. The way I see it, it works as like a panty liner, right? The smaller version.
yeah.
And I'm just trying to understand like how many of those would be required for a woman to use when she has her period, especially when she's flowing the first 2-3 days when it's heavy. And then what about leakage? What I understand, based on what you've said, is basically she doesn't have to clean it as much, right? That's the fact. That you're using that portion.
Yeah.
And then the idea around disposal, and if this is available in the market, where have you pilot tested, etc. If you can just talk about that.
Yeah, so it's you can't use it for your flow on its own. So you need to use it with a cloth pad. But the point is that then you can wear that cloth pad a lot longer. So otherwise, on your very heavy flow, depending on how the cloth pad is made with how many layers, they can get full in 3 to 4, 5 hours. But if you're using a labia pad with the cloth pad, and if you're on like a really, really heavy flow, then you'll have to change the labia pad every 1.5 to 2 hours and keep wearing that same pad a little longer.
Is it an adhesive that it's stuck on the...
No, your labia actually holds the labia pad because it's the way the texture is, and you're lubricated naturally during menses, so it just stays in place. You have to be careful when you go to the toilet, because if you don't remove it first and sit on the seat, it will drop in the toilet. So that's the only, I'd say, drawback to labia pads. You have to be careful and just keep changing it every 2 hours on your heaviest flow. If you are not on the heaviest flow, then they'll definitely last longer. And so if you change it whenever it's full and before you start staining the pad, then you can wear the cloth pad longer.
What about the disposal? Have you looked into that?
So they are washable and reusable, right? Yeah,
They're cloth,
yeah.
basically.
So made of cloth, yeah. So if you have, say, 10 of them and you keep them for years, just wash and reuse.
Okay. So we'll move on. Okay, we'll take one last question and then we'll move on to the rest of the panel discussion.
Or do you have to keep on changing it every time?
You can put it back if it's not full yet. Usually you go to the toilet if every 2-3 hours it's likely that it will be full and you will end up changing it, but it's okay to put it back. Any sanitary protection, either the disposable pads or cloth pads, ideally like when the blood is on them, you should change them every 4 to 5, 6 hours maximum. Yeah.
Okay, so let's move on to the rest of the panel discussion. Kristen, I would just like to understand from you, your focus has been from the beginning on disposable but biodegradable sanitary napkins, right? But with that, you operate in a completely urban market. I mean, you're not really reaching the bottom of the pyramid. So this market is currently pretty much saturated with, whispers and stay frees and etc. So how have you dealt with sort of entering that market with an absolutely new product?
Yeah, so it's been really interesting from a number of different perspectives. First of all, we're looking at it from a holistic solution. So in terms of, I think something that everyone's mentioned so far is that instead of just focusing on the product, we thought if we're going to be making sanitary pads, then what is it that they consist of? And realizing that there are plastics and chemicals and all of these things that are not really good for us as women using the product, and also for the environment as well. We really made it our focus to find other alternatives. And so in finding those other alternatives, we've seen benefits for women that we didn't even know were there, as in when people started using the product, they would tell us, oh, I really like your product because it's very soft. It doesn't give me any rashes, or I don't experience itching like I would with normal products. So we've learned some of these things from the consumers themselves. And in terms of the market, yes, there are a lot of products out there, but the people that have kind of come to us looking for something different, something that is eco-friendly, or something that is made from new materials that they can try and see whether it would help them in a different way. Like someone had just written to us recently and said, I used to have UTIs with the current products that I use, and now I don't experience them when I use your product. So those sorts of things have really been encouraging for us to continue to work on developing the product even further and making it just as good as what you would get from a big MNC, but yet using natural materials.
Okay. So, I mean, environmental impact seems to be a big trigger for adoption for your consumers. And I guess then these consumers are more, aware, educated sort of segments that you're looking at. But continued usage then, is comfort the only factor, or are there other reasons why people have continued to use the product? Or has it been long enough for you to know that?
I would say that it's not been long enough for us to know for, say, a year, that sort of thing, because we just started sales. But I think that just the initial feedback so far, comfort is definitely a huge factor, especially for this kind of product. If you have to use it for 5 days of the month and you have to use it every month, and you're already going through other stresses, then this is something that you don't want to be worried about. And I think the other thing also is that for us, we really, we do promote the product, but we also feel like so long as someone has a choice, if they want to use disposable products because that's how their lifestyle is most convenient to them maybe, or if they want to use a reusable product, that's also fine. We're just interested in the fact that you have an option to use something that's sustainable. And for us, we're looking at the supply chain a lot for the manufacturing. We're working with banana fibers on that end, and working with women as well to manufacture the product. So trying to take into consideration all these different aspects, because we've seen things like some of our inspiration comes from clothes manufacturers that are doing kind of ethical supply chain. So in that same way, why can't that be done with other products as well, such as sanitary pads?
Right. And how can this thinking be brought, or maybe, I don't know, in a consultative way taken to the larger manufacturers as well, of being more responsible?
I mean, we're pretty vocal about how we operate, what our vision is, what we believe in. So if they catch on and they adopt the same mentality, that's great. But I think it's very difficult to change, like, if you have a big MNC, they have already established supply chain that's billions of dollars. They invested already into that machinery, equipment, how they built the negotiations they have with suppliers. So that lasts a long time, and for them to change that right away to something very new is going to cost them a lot of money, and they bring down their cost by being at scale. And so they can offer you a product that's a lot cheaper because they have the volumes to do that. So it will take them time, like instead of taking them a few years, they're starting with already all this other machinery, so that would take them maybe 10 to completely turn over their entire business.
Okay. So if we were to say that a larger MNC were to take up a product like yours or any other biodegradable product and run with it, they would be able to probably manufacture it at a much lower cost.
Yeah, so if they produce at the same volumes they do their current products, they would be able to. I mean, economies of scale is amazing, so it would definitely bring down the cost of this kind of product.
Right. Okay. And I understand you guys are also developing ultra thin variants, trying to target the upper end of the consumer segment, from what I understand. So what role does this consumer segment have in making a social enterprise like yours commercially viable?
Yeah, so right now we're also, in addition to working on developing the product further, we're also working on a program with an NGO in Jharkhand. And so we would love to have everyone be able to have equal access. We do realize cost is an issue, and so because right now, based on what we're using, it's difficult to bring down the cost at this scale. We feel that if we can have kind of a subsidy model, we'll be able to provide these also in rural areas as well. So we're working with the NGO just to see, what's the acceptance and what are some of the things a rural consumer is looking for in the product, because their needs are different than an urban consumer. So even there could be product variations as well. But I think the idea is that if we can promote this in an urban area, we can also begin to subsidize.
So it would be able to trickle down over a
Yeah,
period of time, just like any new product introduction would, right? But I guess if we were to push any policymakers to, towards this direction, if we were to defray costs for rural consumers, those could be introduced much earlier.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, Pratik, I think at the same time I would like to ask you as well, because you also recently sort of moved from a non-compostable to a compostable product, and so just overall, what is your approach to MHM and in setting up, market linkages in an ecosystem manner? Or what's the thinking behind the model?
Yeah, let me first mention that we all owe our existence to Mr. Arunachalum, because he's the one who's inspired Aakar. And so the founder, who's not me, so there's another gentleman who's a much younger chap. He was working with him to figure out, what his machine was and what it was doing for the women that were manufacturing it. Because Arunachalam's model is not just about, the product itself. It's about the ecosystem he creates, which is about women-led enterprise at the last mile, which ought to be self-sustainable. And that's when we realized that, while Mr. Arunachalam's machine was able to deliver a certain quality, we were not able to provide what ought to be given to the last mile women as well. Just because we are poor, you shouldn't be just, given a product. There has to be a bit of dignity attached to it. And that's where, this whole machinery got upgraded to what we have as our machines. And parallelly, there was a lot of research being done on how do you make this composition of the material. So people who know the pads is basically the plastic at the outer layer, which is typically what takes 500 to 700 years to disintegrate if you buy the normal ones, which is lying outside as well. And then you have the absorbent layer, which is cellulose based or banana fiber in our case, or could be something else, which is typically degradable. That's not a problem. But then the top layer, which is the permeable layer, which is in our case the bio-non-woven. So there was a lot of research that went into how this can, these three materials ought to be, to have the kind of absorbency, the pH, and then the rest of the specs as good as possible, especially as far as the BIS standards of the country was concerned. And in that research, over a period of about 3 years, we finally perfected something. I won't call it perfected, but something that was scalable and replicable. Because the model of Aakar is not about setting up massive units in a factory area kind of a thing. This is about small units run by women, 10 to 15, 20 of them, depending on how many sealing machines you can have. So typically a unit can produce 5,000 packets or 10,000 packets meant to be circulated within the locality there. And obviously, when you're talking about settings where people don't know enough about menstruation, forget about acceptance of pads, and nobody cares if they're compostable or not, because that's a very different segment that will possibly be even thinking of using, should that be an incentive that you want to offer. But then that kind of became a policy for us, that whether it takes a long time or a short time for women to change their habits from their the clothes or rags that they were using to something more hygienic that we had to offer, we will definitely switch on to the compostables, because I'm fortunate enough to say that we're the only ones in the world that can manufacture one at a micro unit level.
Okay.
Because this requires a level of technology which you can do in large settings, and there are a few companies in the US that do it at scale. But you have to take it down to the last mile where you have a small unit, 10 by 10, 10 by 15 kind of a room, and you set it all up. It requires a different kind of innovation. And that's something that we've managed to now circumvent. As of now, the cost is slightly higher if you compare with the commercial products that we have. We sell them right now at 35 rupees for a pack of 8, which includes a 5 rupee commission for the women who's selling it as well. So it's not costly that by that standards. But from what I'm told, it's fairly as good as MNC quality with the wings and all. So it pretty much fits the bill, unlike the typical square pads that I had seen earlier as well. But that does not complete the solution. One is the manufacturing part of it, where you have these women who will have very, very low skills typically. We don't need people with very high skills. But then eventually we want them not just to produce, but to sell, which means you have to do the sales training, get the market linkages there, get the depots and everything arranged. And finally, there has to be a small behavior change campaign around in that area, because we want that small area itself to absorb those pads. Should that not happen, we obviously have a process of centrally procuring them and sending them elsewhere, because we also do get bulk orders to do so. But then again, our behavior change program is very, very comprehensive. We don't do a touch and go. It's a 1 year long behavior change program. And I'm sorry to say, a lot of people have trivialized the behavior change aspect since morning, as if it's like this is how it works. It does not work, and I'm glad that a few people who've done work at the last mile know that it just does not happen like that. It's a long haul, it's a bloody long haul, and let's not trivialize this at all. It takes a lot of time to change. It takes a lot of time for them to just switch on to get into an exchange in the first place. Forget about changing a product and becoming an advocate for the next set of people that they might interact with. But that's basically our solutions model. You manufacture locally, you sell locally, you do behavior change locally so that the product can be absorbed. But also to add that in the behavior change part of it, we also go with the whole basket of products, where we are happy to put in the cups, and in fact, She Cup is one of them, EcoFem, and a lot of Goonj products are also there. So we've not asked for permission, but we just kind of take the whole thing there. It's a full basket of choices, literally in that sense, and we'd love to have your products very soon coming in. And yes, it's about going to the pros and cons of what is there, what are the economics behind it, what is it that how do these products affect you, and then up to you to pick and choose. And just to add that Poonam Mutreja talked in the morning about the government procurements that have happened, and the L1 system of the government, the way it just spoils the whole market. So while you have this government push towards menstrual hygiene and the push towards use of pads, those pads end up as dusters and whatever else, because if women actually have to make a switch on that experience, it is just not working. And somewhere this forum also needs to talk about what happened to Make in India, Skill India, and producing locally and whatever. If it all has to be about some big PSU sourcing it from China, and that's the fact of life. And this is where a lot of people around in this room who are in this enterprise mode need to get support, that there has to be some way in which procurements do get local as well. And if it can be in a local geography, the government should support it as well.
Not just local, I think procurement and beyond just procurement, all of the policy considerations, including standards, including taxation, what have you, everything should be more holistic rather than just looking at cost, which is the L1 approach that you're talking about, right?
Well, or at least on menstrual hygiene products, we have a long way to go. Even BIS doesn't have adequate standards around that. So, we're barely talking about absorbency, pH, and a few other things. There's so many other factors that go amiss. For us, when we're talking about compostables, and I'm sure the audience appreciates that compostable is going way beyond the current the stuff that we normally have on offer. We have no agency that certifies that in India. So we do have the US Composting Council and the EU councils certifying our products, but there's nothing like that in India, which is such a shame. So we're going to the IIT Delhis and the ICT Mumbais and other CPETs of the world to get this kind of certification going, because we just don't have anything to bank on as a certification which kind of just validates our product. And then we could actually go on rooftops and say that, look guys, we have a local solution. It is done by women at the last mile. It just ticks a lot of those CSR boxes as it were. Women empowerment, livelihood, health, education, and you can go on and on in terms of what are the benefits you can bring to the table. But there's absolutely no standardization here. And I don't know if this is the forum to talk about it or not, but I would assume that all the relevant players are there. So while we talk about GST, and I'm sure the ministry is doing a fantastic job of pushing that agenda, not much can be done beyond. If the ministry is pushing it, believe me, you and I can't do really much about that. It's already sold, so they're pushing it internally. And I'm an ex-bureaucrat, so I can kind of vouch for that. But yes, in terms of the other standard pieces, we are just not there.
Right. And it's not just sanitary pads, it's the whole basket of products, right? Menstrual cups, cloth pads. I mean, it's the whole category as such that needs to be standardized, which doesn't
completely,
exist
because as I said, menstrual hygiene product as a range has no benchmarks. Right. Absolutely no benchmarks. So that's why Manish was talking about his certification from the US, and I'm talking about US and EU, which is ridiculous, because we have so many people that we are trying to serve here, and so many internal players who would like to actually take the product global. So we have these machines now in Africa as well, and there's a great demand for it, more so from the livelihood perspective, ironically, not so much from the menstrual hygiene perspective. But whichever way, as long as the product goes into the market and there's enough traction around it, we're happy about it.
No, fair point made. And Irfan, I would just in fact like to use this point to ask you, since you actually introduced a new product, through a vendor, you started procuring a product when you launched sanitary napkins as part of the Janani basket of products, social marketing basket. I mean, normally if you are trying to procure a product, you would look at what standards exist, what guidelines exist, and benchmark according to that. Did you see a vacuum there? I mean, what was your experience in figuring out what to offer, where to get it from, whom to get it from, quality issues?
See, actually for us the mantra was very clear, that why do we want to add this in the basket of the Janani products, which were predominantly contraceptive products. One, that there was a need for this. There was a market and we wanted to go for it. Yes, I completely agree with Pratik that there were no standards in terms of who would certify, how to get and it was easy to procure. I mean, you don't have to really go through a lot of procedural challenges and all that stuff. So I would say that was predominantly one of the reasons why we added that in our social marketing.
The market exists. There is a demand
exists,
for it.
yes.
However, guidelines do not exist. In fact, how do we know even the MNC products that we are using, which cost up to 11, 12 rupees per pad, what are the guidelines that they are abiding by? It's not international standards, definitely. So we don't know what raw materials are going in there. So definitely you need an advocacy push on that agenda overall on guidelines.
But just to sort of add before you sort of go on to your next question, understanding the fact that there are quality issues and this could lead to adverse effects, we sort of had our own sort of quality checks in terms of making sure that so we always tried sort of tested with some of our employees or friends and families, because our employee base were quite strong. We had 1,000 staff working with us, so it was easier for us to sort of get a feedback from them as to in terms of is it okay in terms of the gum that is being used, because that was one of the irritant that we found later, and then we had to sort of make sure with the manufacturer that they sort of change that or use a different product. So I think those things is something which again we were talking about responsibility and something that needs to come in when we're talking about innovations, or even if you're talking about conventional products. There has to be a self sort of imposed responsibility that you have to look at these things.
But if somebody doesn't have that sense of ethic, you need to have some basic guidelines in place.
Exactly.
Right?
So business without ethics, I think that's something which is a no-no, should be a no-no always.
Yeah, right. So, I mean, you at that time when you introduced sanitary napkins, there wasn't much choice available in terms of other products, or at least information about other products as viable products to introduce. But if you were to make that decision today that, I have to introduce a menstrual hygiene product, would you still go for disposable sanitary napkins, or would you consider the others that are on the table today?
See, I think, again, it goes back to, I think, one of the questions that you took in the opinion poll was about the accessibility and information. Yes, there are lots of products. Even some of the products that I saw today, I didn't know about them. So the fact remains that how much a woman or a girl who's sort of about to sort of start bleeding or menstruation, how much does she know and where can she access these products? Because if you go to the open market, you will only find the conventional disposable. Yeah, and that's the reason why I think I'm sure the entire group here believes that and agrees that you need to create those forums where girls and their mothers can be talked about, all the other existing, and then the choice is at the end of the day lies with the user. We can't force it down, but then yes, they need to know. But given the landscape today, I would still would go with the disposable. I think for a variety of reasons, easier to access, cost wise. Yes, disposable is a problem, but I think for the user, that's I think on the last in the priority list. So I think keeping those, because at the end of the day you're catering to your customer, and if you look at her, then you are basically then picking this as one of the easiest and the most
without
viable
any
one.
intervention, that is the only pull product.
Exactly.
Everything else you have to push through. You still have to create those categories, and still I think are creating those categories across people who are. So yeah, I mean, I think we're going to continue to do that, and congratulations on the work that all of you have already put in doing that. And I think all of us in this room are going to continue to support you in doing that because it's for the greater good. So at this point, I think it'd be, I can open the floor to a couple of other questions if anybody has any. Please.
Thank you. That was a very fascinating and a very informative discussion. I had like one comment and one question. The comment was on the previous session we were discussing about cost, and I think Meenakshi brought out that perhaps what appears to be more expensive but is environmentally more sustainable. So something that, or even in the Aakar thing, that what is coming out to be slightly more expensive, but there is an environment sustainability element. So I think when we look at cost, perhaps and given that this is an area where there are a lot of knowledge gaps and there's a lot of research that's going to go on, and all of us are going to be participants in that, either as key informants or just people who would influence or that design, that when we are looking at costs, it's perhaps important for us to look at it from both what's implicit and explicit, because the cost to the environment is also a tangible financial cost, and that's something that's somewhere lost when we talk about it from a product and a very marketing or in financial perspective. So that was one comment, and because to me that's not expensive, and perhaps as we said, that one solution fit all won't work. So perhaps you want to take that product in the first go to an economic segment which will adopt it or which is already converted on the environment sustainability piece, and you want to look. So I guess those are the different variants that we can work on. The second question that I had, and that was from Irfan's point, was on I guess like all of us, in the panel, we're solving different problems. Okay, so there's like menstrual hygiene management, but we are all approaching that from a different problem standpoint. Someone is coming from a consumer perspective, somebody is coming from a medical health perspective, large for particular, or from an environment perspective. And I guess like when you say that for the consumer, it's the cost that's the pull and the comfort as the pull. So I guess, don't you think then perhaps the responsible ethics or the business, that for somebody who's working on the consumer, you also want to bring that in your narrative, or like when you work on your product improvement, that a product that is, how do you make a product that is a consumer pull, also environment sustainable? And I think the same thing for somebody who's coming it from an environment perspective, how do you make something that's environment sustainable and also consumer? So I would love to get your thought. Is that something that's going on, and is there what are next steps for that?
No, definitely. These two sort of, if they go hand in hand, I think that makes the best combination. And it's not that we were just looking at that aspect, because it was specifically with reference to the question that was asked. But we were looking at other options. And we're just talking about the pad man, and we actually got in touch with him, and he's a very good friend of ours. And we got him to our headquarters in Patna, had a couple of rounds of discussions with him as to how we can look at other options and looking at livelihood and other ways of making not only the product sort of out there to be available for women, but at the same time looking at providing livelihood solutions to women. So yes, these are things which kind of go parallelly. But as I said, looking at a social marketing point of view, and the fact that we wanted to add it in a basket product where people would buy it, because we can't hold that inventory in our stock. So we had to choose a product which would move fast, and this is one of the fastest moving product right now.
And just wanted to add here that the costs are really not there anymore, and the moment the volumes hit the shelf, believe me, just the case for Sapkins or for anyone, the moment the volumes hit the numbers that it should, it's anyway lower than the MNC cost for a pack of 8, as in the Aakar product. So it's pretty much there. But it's also about, how does this forum become the catalyst for what ought to be pushed, not just for standards, but just in terms of, we were talking about disposal in the session just after. this is a space where, if as civil society we don't raise the right voices and we don't make the right choices, we are, what kind of example are we setting there? So even if there's a bit of a hit, and just in terms of the cost to the women, I have seen personally that, if women don't even know that there's a relationship to, childbirth and menstruation, or, disease and menstruation, or better hygiene practices and the use of a pad or any other, material for that matter, for them to spend that extra suddenly becomes a man's decision, and then he'll decide that it's not important for you. And if you ask a woman that, okay, do you have this 1 rupee of a bidi or a gutka or whatever per day in your life? A lot of them do. And because that's their priority, that's how they've kind of seen that part of their entertainment, or, that's that fun quotient in their lives. The moment we switch them on to that, this is for your existence, this is for your comfort and your well-being, there's a very good chance that that small delta will move. And then it's the aspiration that you kind of set up when you see a TV ad and everybody wants to go for the blue pad, when you're bleeding blue. That was the kind of example being given. It's all about changing mindsets and giving them a perspective that they never had. Once you do that, we firmly believe that this small delta will change.
Even now.
Sorry. Yeah, and then I also want to add that we started with an environmental focus in terms of the problem in a way that we were trying or the angle that we were using to solve the problem. But I would say that actually these products also have benefits for the user as well. And without using chemicals, you don't have the same reactions. Those chemicals can be very strong and give strong reactions to certain people as well. So basically, it's also a health issue as well that we're trying to address. And then in terms of disposal, yes, for the consumer, you may not see it, especially in a city. You would say, okay, I throw my trash outside, and then someone else takes care of it, the government, AMC, whatever. But it costs them a lot to have piles of disposables, sit in the landfills for hundreds of years. If they had other options, for them it would also be a huge cost, and they get their funding from you, so eventually it ends up going back to you as tax. But it's harder to understand like how that whole system works until you kind of see, these are all the pieces, and yeah, when it leaves my house, that's not the end of it. It will go to a landfill, or it will go on the street, and I'll see it again later, or that sort of thing. So trying to understand the whole picture, it's sometimes better to have it.
Yeah, and I think it's important to get policy makers to really understand that point, that it's a cost to them, that this whole push on the non-biodegradable products is costing them a huge amount of money. And so maybe then the overall push then can result in a more sustainable direction of the industry, because you can't expect individual industry players to take that direction without any external push right now, at this point of time at least.
I just wanted to add very quick.
Yeah.
See, I was listening to Malkiji. He was talking about markets and consumers and all. It's very fascinating. I also come from an advertising and PR background, so I understand when you talk about purely putting on the product hat or the marketing hat, you have to understand that the commercial products which are already there in the market have been there for a very, very long time, right? And advertising has done very well by establishing a certain narrative around that, right? And so therefore, if you're coming here and you're trying to sort of talk about different things from what the narrative was, it's a very challenging work. And to be able to remove the limelight from that blue thing to saying, okay, no, this is a real person that you're talking about. He has real issues about menstruation, and there is a disposal issue, and there's a waste issue, and there is a health issue. That calls for, and I think it's a responsibility, it's a opportunity, both things, because here is a market which is opening up now, purely from the product point of view, I'm saying. And as a first go person or first go producer or manufacturers, it is therefore incumbent on everyone who's trying to get a product in, reusable, non-reusable, combustible, whatever, that you have to build that narrative in a new way now. So all the issues that have not been talked about will have to be talked about now. And so I don't think it's something that you can avoid in any which way. You will have to make that part of, when you're talking about the product, you'll have to talk about the disposal I mean, you can't take one from the other and then try and build it.
Right.
Quick.
Absolutely. All right. I think we've run out of time now. So if there are any more questions, I think we can take them offline with the panelists. But thank you so much for your inputs. I think it was, we covered a wide range of topics, and thanks for coming and sharing your views.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Thank you very much.